It's a good night to be a Kart Rider Drift League fan because myself and Peter are going to be bringing you guys 2 team matches worth of action and our second match of the round of 16 for individual players in the solo match. So it's going to be a good night. Got a lot of Kart Rider action coming at you guys.
We got the exact same format as yesterday, and we've had so many good matches and perfect moments that we want to keep highlighting, and I hope we get some more today.
I think we definitely will. We've seen a lot of really exciting moments, I think, towards the middle of our tournament here. At the beginning, I think people were still adjusting to Kart Rider Drift. We had a lot of old players struggling at the beginning, but finally finding their footing. A lot of new rising stars. So really, I mean, anything could happen today.
Anything, and I hope everything that we've seen so far in terms of clutch moments happen as we take a look at the team match overview. We are still in the main stage right now, going through the round robins between 8 teams. And of course, they're all fighting for that top 4 spot to be able to move on to the postseason. There are 3 matches prepared for them, where the winner will be able to win a 40 million Korean won prize pool.
Yeah, a lot of money on the line here. Here are our standings. And right now, Kwangdong Freaks heavily in the lead, but Aura playing against Liiv SANDBOX today. This is a huge match for the standings because if Aura wins this, they'll move up to 4-1. It'll put Liiv SANDBOX at 2-2, and Liiv SANDBOX will fall pretty heavily down to 3rd place. A team that was really considered our favorites for this tournament, not performing as consistently, especially with what's going on with SUNGBIN right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's our first matchup of the night. Second matchup will be between Rox and FINALEe, and then we'll have, of course, our solo match.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I am really excited for Liiv SANDBOX versus Aura, because if Liiv SANDBOX truly loses today, that means they're actually going to now struggle to even maintain that top 4 position, and no one coming into KDL Preseason was going to expect that to happen. And of course, for match number 18, Rox versus FINALEe is going to be pretty much all about who is going to continue their momentum, continuing the positive streaks, and ending the negatives.
Exactly, and for Rox, it's really finding out about whether they can start to put that item mode to the test, because FINALEe have a very strong item ace in Banana. But talking about our first matchup again here, tournament favorites Liiv SANDBOX having a bit of a struggle in their last series. It was against Kwangdong Freaks, our currently first place team here in KDL, but at the same time, you have to consider that they had SUNGBIN out. He wasn't able to play. Jimin was stepping in. But Jimin will also be stepping in today, filling the sweeper role, because SUNGBIN is back, but he's not feeling well enough to participate until we get to the item mode. He's feeling more comfortable there. That's why you'll see today he's listed as the item ace, Jimin as sweeper.
Yeah, when we see that SUNGBIN didn't even enter the race this time. He is waiting for that item mode entry. And honestly, Aura, they have no problems right now in their roster. If anything, they're starting to have their teamwork get even better. So I'm really feeling like this is going to be a very evenly matched lineup.
Jong has also been extremely successful in terms of some of the item aces. I'm sorry, I mentioned Jong. I meant to say Hero.
Yeah.
In terms of what he has been able to accomplish so far, only playing the 1 and losing to Hojun, but he's such a successful player that if it does go to ace and we see NEAL struggle, then we could see that upset happen again. Because for me, looking at this one, I think speed still definitely could go to Liiv SANDBOX here, even with the lack of SUNGBIN. But we'll have to see how they perform on the day, because Aura has just had such a fantastic time with their teamwork when it comes to the speed race. And Plansy, you look at some of these players, Plansy's Banana, these are the players that I think are the best item aces today, but Tech had a really great performance, actually, just last time around. So we'll see how SUNGBIN does as he steps into the item ace position. It's not going to be something he's necessarily comfortable with today.
Hopefully, he'll be able to find that comfort very soon. SUNGBIN now taking on the stage. We can see the average ranking for the players in Liiv SANDBOX. Very high for Hyunsu and SUNGBIN, sitting at 2nd and 3rd each. Attacks per minute and defenses, it's about middle of the pack. They do it only when it's necessary.
Yeah, it's a good point. We'll show you fast and furious driving.
Nice. That is a lot of confidence, and I hope I see some of that fast and furious driving as well. I love it, especially when our players switch it up between running and sweeping. All of a sudden they might do a crazy 360 out of nowhere and knock 3 people out.
Yeah, yesterday we saw Spear with some actual incredible plays. Definitely one of my favorite players to watch so far this tournament. Players showing their names here up to the camera. Hero, the ace player so far for this team. Knock has been so consistent, even performing extremely well in the solo competition. And you still don't know who we are, but we're demonstrated we demonstrated professional performance by victory. The nickname there, Aura, of course, kind of jokingly used there in the pun of their taunt there. So kind of hard to explain in English, but very clever. And here's their message, of course, over to Liiv SANDBOX.
When you played against Guangdong Freaks, you didn't look like a sandbox, but a sandbag. VR sandbag as well. I like that.
Yeah. And it's true to a certain extent. It stings for Liiv SANDBOX fans, but their performance was fairly muted, you know, last time around. And it wasn't just about Seungha not being there. The teamwork fell apart a little bit. You didn't see NEAL perform up to standards in the ace match. So we'll have to see if they can tighten it up tonight, as we do have our speed track list here. Gold Rush will be where we're starting. It's Aura's map pick. Then we're going to New York Rally, Boostwood, Terracotta Twister a little bit later than usual here, and then Pharaoh's Pass.
We've certainly seen a lot of Terracotta Twister being picked for round number 1, but Liiv SANDBOX choosing to favor that for their second pick. And of course, the bans coming out from Liiv SANDBOX on rickety rails, winding slopes. These tracks are definitely tricky. They have a lot of turns. And then for Aura, we have Zigzag Timberland and Bayside Bridge Run.
So we have a pretty standard set of tracks here, actually, for speed. We're not really getting too into the really complex ones, like windy slopes, rickety rails, and Zigzag Timberland. Those three in particular are quite complex. So kind of lowering the ceiling in a little, in some ways lowering the ceiling of what we're going to see here, potentially.
Yeah, and our fan from SANDBOX giving a little punch and a thumbs up to the camera. We love it. Aura fan, Aura's ace. They're mentioning the players that they are so good that they're an ace.
Yeah.
Since when did we have a rival? This is like a Korean thing where you take a word and you put 3 different letters, but we have global fans coming in for the first time into our KDL.
Amazing to see that we're seeing now global fans actually coming down to the arena to watch Kart Rider live. A league that has fans now all around the world, Peter. But we're starting off our first series of the night. Liiv SANDBOX versus Aura. Our first track will be Mine, Gold Rush. Off we go. Hero, the current track leader in terms of the record right now. Starting off here as we move into this first turn, Hyunsu and NEAL taking the lead.
We have Knock and Seas with that 2-3 trying to contest NEAL, but of course Liiv SANDBOX is going to have their comeback coming in real soon to support NEAL. It doesn't really seem like a lot of things are going on right now. A lot of players are just trying to contest for that top position.
Yeah, right now Liiv SANDBOX in firm control. Knock the only one here in top 4 right now. So Seas is going to need to try to move up here with Na'Vi to contest the back of this pack, or it is just simply going to be a Liiv SANDBOX controlled victory here. As Knock alone is a fantastic player in these types of scenarios, but alone 1v3, there's not a lot he can do. He's actually going to try to push up to pole position here, take that first place spot away so the rest of his team can catch up, but they're not pulling the weight. Seas and Hero very far behind right now, as you can see.
Yeah, and NEAL is not giving the giraffe range at all for Knock. Knock does somehow manage to find the lead. That first place spot gives a lot of breathing room for Aura, but if you look at the standings, all 3 members of Aura are being blocked out by Insu and Jimin right now. This is not looking good.
Yeah, it really is not. Look at the blocks coming through here from Insu. He's just preventing anybody from coming through. He's sweeping extremely well here. And so despite Knock's consistent performance here, he alone isn't going to be able to get it done. Hero needs to actually cross that barrier. That's not happening right now, as Insu does fall back, but now Jimin is the one who's causing the problems here.
Hero and Seas, they got the draft off of each other, so it gave room for Hero to finally get up in the top 5 until that happened.
Yeah, Hyunsu getting the knock there. Looked like Jimin as well helping out, pushing the back, and that's that, man. This is just all as she writes for this one, it looks like. I mean, so difficult to catch up here. Knock making a final push here. Na'Vi as well, but it's going to be a 1-2, and just such fantastic defensive play here from Liiv SANDBOX. And they're going to take this first race, and this is the form that you wanted to see from them in that race against Guangdong Freaks. Is Jimin looked a little bit less comfortable there in a team scenario, but today looking fantastic, and that's really important when you consider he's going to be playing his solo match later on tonight too, so maintaining that form is so important.
A complete overwhelming 1-2 from Liiv SANDBOX. There was a lot of attempt from Aura. They tried to get Hero up there to support Knock, but Navi and C's really struggled to keep up, and they hit a lot of obstacles and also great blocks from Liiv SANDBOX, and it was pretty much over by that point.
Yeah. Looks like both Hyunsu and Jimin had a part in that final defensive push around that final turn where the corner was hit, and they had multiple collisions there, Aura did. Still a good recovery, but with that much of a lead, even if you push into 3, 4, 5, or, you know, subsequently the best places you can get, because the top 2 spots are occupied by Liiv SANDBOX, you can't win. Even if you actually get the pass and you recover from there, if you create enough distance for 1-2, that's a victory condition. That's all you need to win team speed.
Yep, and Hero, he usually has a great synergy with Knox, so we need to see that come in as we take a look at the replay. This is the moment where...
C just isn't able to make the jump on this one.
Yep.
That's rough.
He pretty much solidified his 8th place standing once he crashed into that wall. NEAL's form is crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a meme in Korea, but it is such a true statement about NEAL in this case. As Peter, it's time to move to the second track of this series. World Tour New York Rally will be our track to see if Aura can bounce back and tie us up.
Begin our speed round number 2 between Liiv SANDBOX and Aura. Liiv SANDBOX 1-0 up right now.
This is a track that I always associate with NEAL because he's had great performances on it thus far, and you know, it's a one that he seems very, very comfortable with. He is currently holding the 8th place spot, but we see this from NEAL a lot on this track, where he actually occupies a later spot, then comes up for a later attack towards the end of this single lap track. So keep an eye on him in those positions. He doesn't always actually stay here in the back. He actually can take some aggressive wide turns here and create some disruption.
Right, and we have that Knock and Seize combo looking a lot better for Aura this time around. However, NEAL sitting in 8th place is always a bit suspicious because you know he's going to be doing a lot of sweeping and all of a sudden make it to the top 5 out of nowhere. So far, Aura with a sizable lead.
Yeah, the 1-3-4 win condition is real right now. NEAL actually needs to successfully close that gap. We've talked about how he often does, but right now Hero is doing a great job of locking him out here. And with Seize and Knock, you're just constantly actually covering both angles. NEAL's really struggling to break through.
Hero with another fantastic block on both Jimin and NEAL. He's keeping 2 players at bay, buying a lot of time for Knock and Seize at the front with Hyunsu. And I'm sure Hyunsu's going to get caught up by Knock real soon.
Yeah, holding that 1-2 right now. This is so tight here. As here comes NEAL. This is what I'm talking about. He does it at the last second every single time. All he needs to do is to break into one of these 2 spots in the last 500 meters. He's looking for the attack, but he's out of draft range.
The NEAL build trying to break the 1-2, but Knock staying completely out of the draft range is going to be able to secure that win for Aura. A nice comeback from them. Yeah,
really nice comeback, a big bounce back, and it looked like maybe NEAL was going to be able to do it because he's just so good at that final leg of this track, but the distance was too great. They weren't in draft range, so he had to just take some aggressive inners, but he's also then bumping into his teammates right when he's going around those corners. If you try to take really, really aggressive corners there, it can sometimes come back to bite you, but Seize and Knock just maintaining the lead, and it's a new track record for Seize, the player who actually had an unfortunate miss on the ramp, then really bouncing back in a big way here to set the new record.
Yeah, what was really interesting to see was that the players of Liiv SANDBOX all had more than 40 drifts, while Aura had only 30-something. So it showed how dominating they were, just really not even needing to boost up or build up that boost gauge much because they were already so far in the lead, and they were really unshakable this time.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point that you mentioned. And you know, when you have control and you have the team play to support it, especially players like Nog, it is going to be very difficult to crack through, even for a player like NEAL. Such an exciting series thus far. We're tied up 1-1 as we find out which team is going to take the lead on World Tour Boostwood. Off we go. We are tied up 1 apiece between Liiv SANDBOX and Aura here as we move into Boostwood, our 2-lap track.
We see our players all doing a lot of instant boosting here to try to build themselves a lead. Insu and Hyunsu firmly in that top 2 position, the Park Soo duo, we call them in Korea.
Yeah, really like the strategy we're seeing with NEAL and G-Main here, hanging back here to avoid collisions and seeing if they could actually find kind of an opportunistic angle rather than trying to get through some of these choke points and constantly collide, just waiting for a chance and using the opponent's group up against them actually and trying to play very passively. But it wasn't successful on the previous track. We'll see if they can find that success this time around because right now, again, Aura in pretty nice control.
A lot of body battling going on, collisions happening left and right, but it is Aura who keep managing to find that 1-2-3 angle. Insu and Hyunsu doing all they can, staying within draft range of each other.
NEAL here trying to take this aggressive inner as we move into the second lap here. Now he's had enough of hanging back. He's going to push up forward here. And right now it's still in control of Aura with Insu and Jimin at the back of the pack here. Hero doing some great defensive steps. And Nock, he's the scariest player to have in the top 4 like this because he does so much.
Yep, and we saw Navi manage to find a way to break through the defense of NEAL. Now Aura has 3 members up there. Of course, now Liiv SANDBOX. NEAL coming into first place.
Yeah, NEAL just pushing up here at the last moment. Still in the lead now, Liiv SANDBOX with his final push here. Insu's taking some very wide angles here, trying to find that push through himself. And this is so close right now, just 1 point ahead right now for Liiv SANDBOX.
Yeah, that angle didn't really work out for Insu, but our players at the front, Liiv SANDBOX, there's 3 members trying to beat out the 2 members of Aura. We are coming into the last few steps. Navi holding that first place position, and Hyunsu couldn't break that lead, and 2-3-5-6 is going to lead to a victory for Liiv SANDBOX.
I love the angle our observers took on C's there because that's the moment you could just feel in some of these speed races for team, the frustration of I have one chance, I have one approach angle I can try to look for, but their defensive setup is so good that you could just see C's is like, what angle do I take? There are no angles. And then you see Jimin and Hyunsu actually take that 2-3. So it's a 2-3-5 victory here for Liiv SANDBOX. A close race though, very back and forth. But ultimately, that final push for Liiv SANDBOX was enough. Insu, his push in particular didn't work, but they even had him as a backup plan. This team is so good at attacking in those final 500 meters.
Yeah, the 500 meters was when they absolutely all were just in collision, and they were not really giving up the ranks to Aura at all whatsoever. That 2-3 position being held so beautifully as we take a look at some of the replay. This is the outer lines that we talked about with Insu. He kept going off on his own path.
Yeah, and that's the kind of insurance plan, so to speak, that Liiv SANDBOX always affords them. And it can look misleading when you see how NEAL and Jimin play, because they're an unusual duo as well, who don't normally, of course, race together. It's only because Sungha is ill, but when you see the way they play together and coming for those final pushes, you can see there's a clear strategy here for Liiv SANDBOX. They're not falling behind, they're intentionally behind. But we'll see if we can tie this one up as we move into World Tour Terracotta Twister.
Speed round number 4, Liiv SANDBOX ahead 2-1 over Aura.
Yeah, very strong start here for Insu. You can see Hyunsu actually taking an aggressive inner there, but he is blocked out by Nock, who is just so good. His situational awareness is so famous here to the Korean fans of the Kart Rider Drift League, and now he's pushed his way into first.
Call him the super observer mode. He stays out of trouble and he just observes what's going on and somehow manages to break into first, which is what he's pretty much doing right now. Insu, however, manages to find the breakthrough angle. It's going a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth here. Now is a great opportunity for Liiv SANDBOX here as we move into the inner part of this track to grab some drafts and make for a big push here. But Navi and Nock taking some very aggressive inners here. That was really risky there from Navi, but he's going to pay off actually. And he and Nock still firmly in the lead right now. Unfortunately for them, they don't have a sweeper in position right now, and this is where things get scary. You hit that second lap, that's when Liiv SANDBOX goes on the attack. And without Hero or C's anywhere nearby, it's going to be very difficult to defend.
Yep. Nock tried to tackle Hyunsu there, but he couldn't get him to lose his momentum. Somehow, Nock still managed to find a better angle to come into second place again. A lot of priority being placed right now on Nock, trying to keep Navi in first place.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this is going to potentially lose a lot of control for them. If Hyunsu takes first place here, that's all they need. As Hero making a final push here too, Insu needs to watch his sweeping here. Because if Hero passes him, that is going to be Aura taking this for sure. They're still in the lead, in fact, at this moment in time.
And here comes NEAL out of nowhere right now. We have
so
two
close
players for each team in the top ranks. Hyunsu now with the sizable lead, but Hero, he's trying to do what he can, and Insu with the fantastic blocks, keeping him from going too far.
It's really about that first place spot. No one can catch Hyunsu's. Hero is making a run for it here.
Insu with the super tight line, trying to come in. Navi, he manages to boop him back, and it's Liiv SANDBOX who come in ahead with the 1-3-4.
Yeah, unfortunately for Aura, even though they had control of the middle of the pack, they didn't have anyone in first place, so the 1-3-4 win condition you just mentioned was what they really needed to crack, and they just weren't able to do it. It was so close, though, very back and forth, and I really did like Hero's last push there. He almost was able to take control, but Hyunsu ultimately did have a great mastery of this track. I think definitely the most consistent player here for Liiv SANDBOX this time around, and that is going to be Speed going over to Liiv SANDBOX here. So a huge bounce back after what was an unfortunate loss to Kwangdong Freaks. Now, the series isn't over by any means, but taking a 3-1 dominant victory here over Aura without Sunga really feels like Liiv SANDBOX have prepared much better. Felt like more of an emergency situation last time. This time, they're better prepared.
Yeah, they had more time to prepare with their new teammate. You know, playing without Sunga, it was definitely a big adjustment to make, but certainly we've seen that Liiv SANDBOX, they cannot be slowed down for too long as we now move on into our item mode where NEAL will be swapped out for Sunga to finally come back into the team.
Yeah, so, you know, keeping both Sunga and Jimin in, this is a question that I had going into this because Sunga is technically listed as the item ace today, but Jimin is normally the item ace, so I was wondering, oh wow, are there too many voices actually? Will Sunga just come in for Jimin? They'll give him an opportunity to play item ace since he's been focusing on that and Jimin's been focusing on solos. They're actually both going to be in here, so this means that Sunga is definitely, you know, coming in prepared for item, but I think Jimin is still technically going to be the shot caller here.
And of course for Aura, we have Tech, the trustworthy shot caller in item mode. He has done so much for his team Aura. They are having such a dominating performance so far in the KDL preseason. Usually when they lose speed, they've always won item, and that's their secret recipe to having a 3-1 standing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You know, I feel like his moves and his plays as the item ace have been less impressive or less flashy, let's say, than some of the other players like I was mentioning, Plansy, Banana, who will be playing later on tonight. But I think he's secretly kind of OP. Like, he's actually secretly maybe the best one, and it's given this team so much success.
Yep, and speaking of, we have a fan for Tech coming in saying he's the best, and we agree. He's been so far so formidable in the item mode as we take a look at the track list. Gangnam Street's being picked by Liiv SANDBOX along with Brody's Gloom, Magma Cavern. Aura, on the other hand, opting for London Knight and Polar Halfpipe.
Yeah, Polar Halfpipe is one of, I think, the most controversial maps in our item track list. It's banned a lot, but it's also picked, you know, usually by the team that you think is the underdog oftentimes if it isn't banned by the favorite.
Right.
But Glacier Icebreaker Pass was actually banned by Liiv SANDBOX. Kind of an unusual ban here.
Yeah, and I think going into the point about Polar Halfpipe, I think the reason is there's this ledge where you have to boost off to get onto the top portion of the map, and if you don't have a booster at that time, you can't get on it. And let's say third lap you don't have a booster, then you pretty much cannot contest for the top spot. So definitely a bit of an RNG on that track, we could say.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's some elements of Brody's Gloom as well that do come in like that. There's the multiple angles for the mine tracks towards the end too, that you've seen on some of these other tracks where you're like, if you don't have a boost, if you don't have that magnet combo, it is very difficult. But in terms of about as basic as it gets for item, we are going to start things off on World Tour Gangnam Streets. Off we go. Sunga is back in here after having some health issues. Still not feeling 100%, but back in now and performing. Excited to see how he's going to look tonight here in item mode.
Yeah, he's had some back problems, but fortunately, Kart Rider you can play while sitting in a chair, so hopefully that'll do some good for his back as we see Knock leading out for Aura. We see Tech holding on to Angel and Booster.
Now, Knock in first at the moment. You can see he's just... This is a new meta where you just spam swapping between your items. This barricade actually getting a little bit of value here.
Yep, two of those barricades hit the players. Water Bomb coming in and hitting Tech. now we see a lot of trade-off. It seems like a lot of aggressive items are being picked by our players today in this track number 1.
Yeah, it's a 3-lap track, and we had so many angels stacked up early. The players are actually using the angels early here. You don't normally see this, but it's funny how, like, because there's so many available right now, it's just a waste, and you need to cycle through them. So it's very difficult to also attack when this many are stacked up. As double magnets held onto by C's here, as Tech with an unfortunate bump there. May have been intentional to move to the back of the pack here to get the additional aggressive item, but still losing a little bit of control.
Yeah, our players have not been able to pick up much lightning this time around to force out some of those angels. We are in the 2nd lap right now. We're seeing a lot of magnets across the board, boosters, angels. Those 3 are the only real items being kept at the moment.
Yeah, that was a really big water bomb actually there. That's really disrupted the control that Aura had, and it does force out a single magnet to be used. C's now at the back with magnet in hand, and there's that magnet booster combo here for Tech as he's moving right around here. We're going into the 3rd lap now, and this is when you have to keep track of who has the magnet and the booster. Magnet rush is the term I think we're going to use here on Global for that final push with the magnet and the booster for 1st place. So we'll see what happens when that occurs here, because this is one of the most open maps in the item mode pool to actually make that happen. You have a lot of space to work with. Those are formations getting set up here. If you can make a line, you have a lot more opportunities for that final push. Insu's in 1st place right now with that set combo. Knock as well.
Yeah, and we have 5 players all holding on to that magnet booster combo. The only difference here is Hyunsu. He's got the booster with the banana. Not coming in hot. We have Hyunsu in the lead right now, fighting with Hero. Hero's getting slowed down by the magnet. We have Jimin now leading. Tech also trying to go for the rank 1, but it's actually Jimin who manages to find that angle.
It was really unlucky, I think, in a lot of ways for Aura there in the final moment, because they had 2 players who had the combo, but Nock got UFO'd. He was the leader, and once he had to use his combo early, Jimin was like, well, I'm back up here, and unfortunately, I'm closer to the finish line. Just slightly, by the way.
Yep.
Just slightly closer to the finish line. And Tech, even though he had a really nice angle, and his attack was, I feel like, almost like academically better. It was actually much cleaner what he did there, but Jimin was just further ahead. And so he's able to win just by the hair of his chinny chin chin.
Unfortunately, no booster to turn things around at the end there. Was players just really using their normal speed to go through. And at the end, it was Liiv SANDBOX who had that initial lead, who managed to close out with a victory, which is a bit of a point of concern for Aura. It's only 1 point down, so they shouldn't be too concerned, but this is where they shine. So they need to find that comeback angle, and hopefully set number 2 is where they find that as we get ready to bring you guys into a fantastic track. I love this one. It's going to be World Tour London Night. Off we go into item round number 2. Liiv SANDBOX 1-0 up ahead Aura.
Yep. Aura having a very close loss in that 1st track. As we move into this one, we'll see if things change. It's another 3-lap track. And similar to Gangnam Streets, it has a lot of open space, but there are a few shortcuts on this map as well. So there's a lot of different angles for that final push. You could go, of course, for the Ferris wheel, which you guys will see momentarily. There's this bridge section here. And there are some obstacles, obviously, falling down to the lower part here. And there's the van that will come across the track, so you have to be careful about that time. Hero is taking the Ferris wheel approach and has quite a large lead right now, but he's not holding a magnet, so I think this is going to be something that eventually, when he falls behind, he's going to be fishing for. He's holding onto a shield for now.
Yeah, the big lightning coming out of Liiv SANDBOX there was not able to force out the Angel from Aura. They actually just tanked it instead. So a lot of members of Liiv SANDBOX now being able to build themselves a lead. We see Nock coming in with the fantastic missile to try to build that position again.
Yeah, Hero here did have to burn his shield and still fishing for that magnet. As we go over the drawbridge right now, C's is the one who's taking 1st place. They're holding on to multiple angels here. And sometimes you could see a team just try to brute force their way, and Liiv SANDBOX has even done this, into forcing an early advantage where you have such a large lead that even with the magnet combo, you're basically out of range of it.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case here, unfortunately, for Aura thus far, as Hyunsu is very firmly in the lead here. He's taking the outer path so he doesn't get water bombed. And he's just saying, all right, I've got 1 combo ready. We've got another one potentially going to be set up here with Jimin.
Right. We got 3 players holding that Magnet Rush, all in that top 4 position. So there's going to be a lot of chaos up ahead. Water Bomb does go missing. And now Jimin speeding up with the Angel, dodging out the missile. This is looking really close.
Yeah, Jimin really close here. Everyone's popping that Magnet Rush right now, but it is C's who's in the lead. Jimin taking a wider turn here, and Hyunsu actually pulls around. Final Magnet's just going to be enough.
My, there was just a whole entire group trying to rush to that first place. It's like watching a Black Friday sale where everyone's trying to get in, but it was Hyunsu who managed to have a slight lead over 3 members of Aura.
And it has been very close, but this is usually where Aura finds the most success. And Jimin is making big plays each and every time here. He finishes 7th, but the timing of his Magnet Rush was actually very good, and Hyunsu was able to take control in the chaos here. But it has been very close. And I feel like if this ends up going to a 3-0 for Liiv SANDBOX, that scoreline won't really tell the story of this item match. I think it's much closer than the 2-0 would lead you to believe so far.
Yeah, it's definitely been neck and neck when it came to those finish lines. One bad news for Aura and the good news for Liiv SANDBOX is that our next track is actually picked by Liiv SANDBOX themselves, so they have a lot of confidence going into this one. It's definitely going to help Aura if they manage to beat them in their favorite track. Yeah,
that's a really good point. As this is the obstacle I was talking about with the bus that you can run into.
Yeah, Insu didn't have a very happy bus ride there.
No, certainly not. As these are the final moments here, a little bit of collision, but ultimately Sunga is able to get around tech there with that final magnet push. The magnet rush, as we're calling it, when you magnet and nitro for that final angle. As all that matters is the first player that crosses the finish line. You save your tools for that moment. As long as you're in range, anything can happen.
Yeah, and today we've seen not a lot of usage of water bombs coming in huge, and Angels overall, they haven't been too impactful. I'd say it was mostly Magnet and Booster. But we're ready now for track number 4, Factory Brody's Loop.
Off we go. Liiv SANDBOX on match point in this series. All they need to do is win this track, and it's a 2-0 victory for them. A huge bounce back after a loss earlier this week. See if Aura can turn things around.
You see the item aces, Jimin and Tech, slowing down into that 8th and 7th position for the double item pickup. Now we see Liiv SANDBOX just throwing a bunch of water bombs around, actually manages to catch Hyunsu on that one.
Hyunsu caught. UFO EMP is being held by Hyunsu at this moment in time. Probably wants to cycle that one out because he's actually going to trade it for a UFO, in fact, here. Might be able to burn one of these Angels early if they could get a more aggressive item here. A homing bomb. The Demon is actually just going to hold this.
Yeah, speaking of aggressive items, 2 Seeker Missiles. That's definitely a big upset for Tech trying to get the lead, but the Angel pop out from Hyunsu is able to block that out. Hyunsu building himself a sizable lead.
Did have to pop that shield here, and is going to get caught by both a UFO here and the water bomb. So does lose control. And right now it's only Nock who actually has that coveted combo here. I say that C's does have it too, but he's much further behind. But there's 2 angles here for this final moment for Aura for that magnet rush. On the side of Liiv SANDBOX, they only have Sunga holding this, but he's very far back in 8th place.
A lot of boosters across the board. I like that Hyunsu has a double boost combo going on. That could be crazy to see if he can maintain this lead in the first place position. We see 3 members of Aura up against 2 members of SANDBOX right now in the top 5.
Yeah, here comes the first Angel coming through. Insu's got 2 of those he can stack. They can chain these together here to try to buy enough space for Hyunsu to just push out of magnet range with those nitros. And I think that's what they're going to look to do. There's a second Angel being used. Gates open here for Hyunsu. And the Angel is going to block that last attack. Here comes the first boost from him. He's got a second and a banana.
Yeah, he held on to this boost till the last moment. He has another one here. I'm sure that's going to put him firmly into the first place unless C's manages to find an angle.
Wow, some very rare sweeping as well coming through from Sunga. You don't normally see this, but they realized, okay, if we hold 2 nitros, we've got double Angel. We just keep him ahead because if you're relying on the double nitro, if you get hit by any obstacle, you're going to need a magnet to catch up. The nitro isn't going to be enough, but if you block every possible attack by perfectly timing Angel after Angel after Angel, then boosting through, it's just beautifully played. And it's Hyunsu's birthday as well today.
Yeah, a solid win for his team coming in on his birthday. I'm sure that's going to be a memorable birthday for him now this year. A complete one-sided 3-0 item mode result.
And there was some great sweeping between him and Jimin there at the final moment, too, to make sure that no one could pass there because they had a big enough lead. And Liiv SANDBOX...
Oh, no, what are you doing to that dog, NEAL? Stop!
Don't hurt him!
But NEAL...
World's not even playing today!
Oh, no, maybe that is some type of world diss, like, oh, you see what I'm doing? You don't want to fight me.
This is the dog in Dog World. Yeah, this was clean play, though, from Liiv SANDBOX, and a more unusual strategy that we don't normally see. Yunsu also had the banana there as well for an additional defensive setup. That was kind of just luck of the draw that he was able to pick that up, but Liiv SANDBOX looking much better today than they did against the Kwangdong Freaks. And I think that Aura and Kwangdong are at a pretty similar level right now. I wouldn't say, well, Kwangdong's the tougher opponent. That's why this was easier. I think Liiv SANDBOX made some critical adjustments in the time between this match and their last one.
Completely different team. It feels like we're looking at Liiv SANDBOX. You know, we were looking at a potential face-off between NEAL and Hero as the Royal Roaders of 2022 Kart Rider League, but we didn't really see that matchup, especially not even getting to the ace mode where we would have seen that shine the most. So a big congratulations to Liiv SANDBOX finding a way to work through these tough moments when your players go through injuries.
Yeah, it's something that you feel really good about if you're still somewhat injured, right, as Sunghai is, but you can come out and perform tonight and you don't let your team down. And it's not his fault, of course, but like sometimes you feel that guilt as a pro player that you're just not able to perform with your team when they need it most, and you want to be the first Kart Rider Drift champions, right? And to do that, you need to get well in the standings so you can have the best chance when we move into postseason. And Liiv SANDBOX, one of the big favorites, and they showed it tonight, is if Aura had won, it would have pushed Liiv SANDBOX back firmly into third. They would have been at a 50-50, 2-2 record, which is just almost unheard of for this team who's been so dominant since they founded in 2019. So a very solid win here and upset prevented.
Upset definitely prevented. Aura now with the 3 wins and a 2-loss standing. They are now pushed back to the 3rd place spot, which is a lot closer to elimination. So hopefully in their next matches, they're able to figure out a reason why, for instance, today, a lot of synergy that we expected to see from Hero and Nock just wasn't there.
Yeah. I mean, Nock played very well in speed, but Hero, he wasn't able to crack through. You know, C's had some decent moments too. Like, I think C's was arguably the best performing player for Aura in speed, despite that one error, obviously. But, you know, at the end of the day, with how good Liiv SANDBOX is at both defense and offense, it's just hard to beat this team. And that's why, you know, sometimes you see NEAL hanging back at 8th place. And if you're new to Kart Rider, you're watching the global stream with us. By the way, tell your friends about this. We got to get the word out there. You're probably thinking, like, by the way, these guys were telling me NEAL's the best player in the world potentially right now, but I see him in 8th place. But notice that when you get down to 500 meters, he's no longer in 8th. And he has a specific plan. He wants to avoid collisions. He wants to get his max speed up at the right moment so that when he actually goes for that final attack and final push, he's not worrying about acceleration. He's not bumping into anybody. He's truly a master of the game, and he performed very well tonight too. Sad we didn't get to see an ace match with him because I think that redemption story could have been there after his failure against Kwangdong.
Yeah, the term for him, it's called NEAL build for a reason because he always does these crazy things that nobody else does, like we seen earlier with Inzu taking the outer line for potential new angles of sweeping that could have arisen. And that diversity coming in from Liiv SANDBOX is what makes this roster truly strong. Everyone's a great runner and sweeper, so basically anytime that these players see an opportunity, let's do a 360 here for the fun of it. And they usually make it work because they're so talented.
Yeah, and that's a level of play from some of these veterans that have played Kart Rider for so long that you're going to see from them. Well, we already have so many players who've been playing for like 2-3 seasons of Kart Rider League, right? As we move into Kart Rider Drift League, that are starting to show their stuff already. Imagine how good those players are going to be, you know, by the time we get to our first regular season of Kart Rider Drift League, and then maybe what they look like in 2024, 2025.
Whoa. We're definitely going way into the future.
Imagine what they'll look like in 2050.
We'll have carts flying by then, no longer on the tracks.
Hover Kart Rider Drift. Kart Rider Hover.
You're giving some free ideas right now.
Yeah, take them next night. I didn't copyright any of this. So.
Just the gold item ideas. You know, I feel like honestly, so far there were some concerns coming into item mode, but definitely we've seen a lot of good plays today from the players around the Magnet and Booster, proving to be a just absolute dominant meta right now in the items. I don't think there's any other items that can shake up the rankings as much.
But even then, Liiv SANDBOX were able to, in their own special way, based on the Angel setup they had there and the double Nitro, try something different. It was very close. It almost didn't work, but you know, Liiv SANDBOX is showing there are other ways, right? Kwangdong Freaks also approaching a very similar way when they played their last item match yesterday. But there is one clear meta, like you said, and it definitely is the strongest. But a great team like Liiv SANDBOX, even if they don't actually get the right items, you know, basically due to RNG or the setup there, it's hard to actually get a Magnet if you don't have one, you're trying to control first place. That if you can have a good shot caller, in this case, basically 2 item aces with Sungup taking that role with Jimin, maybe you could find a way, and that they did.
Yeah, they had the confidence there set up with the double Angel, as you mentioned. I really like that because if you go with the double Booster, there's so many different variables that can happen. What do you do if a Water Wisp comes? You can't just suddenly go to the left. You would hit a wall, and that would end your momentum. So I want to see more of these combos. I want to see especially some clutch UFOs today. Do you think we'll get that, Wolf?
I hope so. I really hope so. I want to see some clutch UFO EMPs. But that's going to be it for our first series. We are going to go to a short break. When we come back, Rocks take on FINALEe-sports.